Welcome to this brand new series of the Birth and Baby Business Show, which we are calling Lessons from a Birth or Baby Business Owner. And we'll be speaking to those who are in or who have been in the birth or baby business world, asking them the questions that you'd like to know the answer to on how they got to where they are in their business right now. My name is Anna Lagrange, and I'm one half of Baba Business, the Birth and Baby Business Academy.
And my name is Liz Stamford, and I'm the other half of Baba Business. We are the community membership for birth and baby business owners. So today we have got the wonderful Sarah Sayer with us. So Sarah has been a nurturing birth doula since 2009, eventually becoming a doula mentor and course facilitator before becoming the CEO of Nurturing Birth in 2023. Sarah has built and sustained a successful career as a birth and postnatal doula and as a hypnobirthing instructor in Bournemouth. Sarah is a big believer in birth workers creating successful and sustainable businesses, investing in their businesses and earning themselves a decent wage from it. Amen. So, Sarah, welcome to the podcast today. And we'd love to start by hearing a bit of a rundown on your life in business so far. So take the stage.
Yeah, and lovely to be here. Thank you for having me, and nice to see you both. So I originally came to birth work from a completely different background. I was in retail management before I had my children, and I read an article in a magazine back in the day where we didn't have the internet and Instagram and all those things for information. I actually used to go to the shop and buy a baby magazine, and read an article about doulaing and thought, yeah, that it just sparked something in me, which eventually led to me searching out a doula course, which I did in 2009 with Nurturing Birth, and never looked back really. And I can remember when I very first started out, I tried to network with the only one other doula that was listed in this area, and I met her for a coffee, all excited, and she was really quite negative and said, no, it's no point, don't do it, there's no work, no one's heard of doulas, it's an absolute nightmare, you'd be wasting your time. And I came away from that so dejected, and I thought, oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting to hear. But it sparked something in me that thought, well, I can make this happen. I'm going to have to make it happen. I'm going to have to tell people what doulas are and what we do and how we do it. Because I could see that in other pockets of the UK, London, for example, Brighton, Bristol, there were doulas that were working. And I thought, I'm going to make that happen for me. So then I had a wonderful long career being a birth doula, and eventually then a postnatal doula here in Bournemouth, where I did come up against lots of people who just looked blank when I said what I did. You're a what? a doula or a dealer, or any number of other things. But thankfully, as time went on, more and more people heard about doulas, and then more and more people knew someone who'd had a doula or had a doula themselves, and how these things grow. And I ended up becoming, I had a really good business here, built up a wonderful network, and other doulas came along, which was wonderful. I then decided to become a hypnobirthing instructor, and that's how I first met Liz many years ago now. I can't remember how many years ago it was, but I can remember going to Birmingham and doing a lovely course with you.
2018, 2019 maybe? Yeah, 2018 I think. Yeah.
And for a short time I ran courses here. I loved that, in-person courses. I just was working quite happily doing that, and then I decided that I felt like I had a lot of experience and a lot to give to new doulas. So I contacted Sophie, who was the owner of Nurturing Birth then, and said, if you're ever looking for someone to facilitate your courses, I'd be really keen. And eventually she phoned me and said, we're looking for a new facilitator, and that then opened up the sort of next door to the next room that I was going to go into with this business that takes you in all different places, and absolutely love that. I mean, facilitating courses, and I think because I had my journey coming from a place of, there was, no one knew what doulas were, and there wasn't really a baby business network locally for me. I kind of knew what the struggles were, and I knew how to kind of overcome those barriers. So I thought I could bring a lot to that role, which I just love doing. And then, when Sophie said that she wanted to step away and concentrate on her other things that she's, really passionate about now, it seemed like the obvious next step. So that's the next room I went into, was becoming the CEO of Nurturing Birth. And it's been an interesting few months. I took it over just maybe 6 or 7 months ago. It's been a learning curve. I'm not going to lie. I've learned a lot of things about myself, good and bad. And I think, I just think with any business, you need to constantly keep moving forward, reflecting, seeing what you're doing well, seeing what you're not doing well, goal setting, all those things. Being part of BABA has been really, wonderful as well. I think you guys get it. So, and then here I am, doing a podcast today, so you never know where you're going to go, do you?
No, exactly. Oh my gosh, Sarah, there's so many things there. I was like busy writing down notes because I always my brain doesn't retain the information for too long. But I could really resonate with so many things that you said, from, meeting up with that doula and your expectations being really like, hey, like, what can we do together? How can we change the world in our little pocket of the world? To being really met with very kind of like low vibe, flat, not going to happen, forget it. I had those experiences, like even at my training and then with, other birth workers in my local area. But what really, really got me was when you said, I'm just going to have to make this happen for myself. Like, I've seen it happen in other places in the country. Why couldn't it happen for me? So I'm just going to find a way and do it. And that's, that's so inspiring, and so such a great little nugget of advice for any birth workers or baby business owners starting out. Like, just find a way to make it happen. If you're that passionate about it, dig deep, you can do it. I just really, really, really love that. And the learning curve that you've been on and what you are on right now it's a big one, isn't it? And I can relate to that because, again, I did the same thing. I bought a business from somebody who was already established. So moved from my lovely, which felt safe, local business, I knew what I was doing, to this much bigger business where I was like, whoa, there's so much going on in the background here that I was working in the business just like you were before I bought it. But the cogs that are turning are unreal. So there's a lot of juggle. So I empathize, and I totally get it. I can feel the feeling that you're feeling right now. Definitely.
I feel like we've had a very similar journey in that respect, and the challenges of taking on an established business are quite unique, because you have to make it your own, and it can be quite difficult. I did find that very difficult because Sophie was such a sort of a well-known face in the community, in the birth world, and I felt very much like an imposter, and it took a while. But again, it's also quite liberating as well to realise that I had a few things where I was doing things within the business, and then I thought, hang on a minute, I don't have to do it this way because it's mine. If it doesn't sit right and it doesn't feel right, then I can change it. So it's quite exciting and quite liberating, but also terrifying. And then going back to what you were saying about that lady that I met originally and how sort of negative she was, it actually is something now that I talk about on the courses when I'm training new doulas, and I think what's interesting is I think that actually said much more about her than it did about me. And it would have been so easy to be put off, but actually and funny enough, we ended up becoming quite good friends, and she is still a birth worker here, but she was in a really dark place in her life, actually, in her personal life, and she was just not in a great headspace to be putting the time and effort in and finding that business. But it would have been so easy to have been affected by that. And I always talk about that, on the courses, that when people are setting up their businesses and they're going to go out and network with other birth workers, which can be so lovely, if you meet a brick wall or you don't have a response, don't take it personally. That says more about that person than it does you. And I think that's that's a business lesson worth knowing, isn't it? That you can't preempt what people are going to do and how they're going to react. And actually, I think if people think that if they see you as sort of like a negative person in their space or competition or what have you, then just walk away from that connection. That doesn't need to happen. You will find your tribe in other areas. So yeah, it's an interesting point.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that even if it can be someone that you haven't even met that can give you that vibe. I mean, I remember coming to the breastfeeding world and seeing, I think, just one post from someone like, oh, you think you're ever going to make money in breastfeeding, then forget it. This is all about, the passion. Of course, passion is vital to work in our world. Of course it is. If you weren't passionate about, birth and babies and families and all that kind of stuff, you'd be in the wrong job. But, it was a really poor message, and I just think that's their reality. But when you put something out for people to read, and if you're someone that people look up to, it can be even more damaging, if you like, and it can become almost like a culture where that's the kind of understanding. Oh, well, we're just making pocket money here, or this is really just a hobby, and that is the problem with that. Is if that's the message that other people coming into this world get, then well, where's the space for the single mums who they are the only breadwinner? Are we saying that only people who are supported by their partners can work in this world? Where's the space for people who have to make, a living? So I have a really big problem with that. Not on an individual basis, like the poor lady that you lit up with was obviously having a bit of a tough time, but just generally it's a really common view in our world, and it is problematic. So I completely agree with you, Sarah, that we need to try and separate ourselves from that, but it can be so cultural that it can be quite hard. And I think it takes sometimes quite a bit of work to kind of move away from that and think, no, actually, I believe I can make a living from this, actually. And I think, I'm going to try and do this my way is a really strong message I took from that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge, huge bugbear of mine. And you're so right. Certainly when I started, that message was rife in the birth world. That we do this because we care, because we're passionate, because people need help and support, and because of the type of business it is. We shouldn't be charging too much and what have you. I mean, I can remember, when back in the day that Doula UK had a cap. You could only charge, I think it was £200 or £250 for a birth, and you're potentially asking people to be on call for 4 or 5 weeks of their life.
Yeah.
Walk out of the door to a birth and possibly be there for 2 or 3 days. You just don't know. And everything that comes with that, with a monetary cap. I mean, thankfully those days have gone.
Yeah.
But there is still that underlying message in some areas of we shouldn't be charging much money for what we do. And I really want to smash that, and that's a big message that we have at Nurturing Birth, is that you can create a sustainable business, and a sustainable business means one where you are earning a wage from it, and that you are, you're being paid your worth, and you're so much less likely to burn out if that's the case. There was a time, and certainly when I started, there was a short period of time where I would literally take all jobs, take all the births, take everything I could, because I needed to make the money. And actually that is not a sustainable way of working. And being on call or being at long births is very demanding, and so we need to be at a sort of stage where we can look at our year and say, yes, I'm going to work however many months or have this period of time where I will take on births and be on call, but actually in July maybe I need to take some downtime. I need to be able to switch off my phone and relax and engage with my family, and because there's always, as a doula, there's always, even if you're at an event or just with your children doing a bedtime or what have you, you might have a client bubbling away in the background who's, in early stages of labour. So you're not 100% in that space. So, it's a big commitment. And it's one that, I can go on about this till the cows come home. We need to be paid appropriately. We need to earn our worth. And then also we then are in a better position to be able to give back. And we can do, pro bono work. We can do sliding scales. We can do, work for charities and really help people who are vulnerable and do need our support but can't pay for it. I'm absolutely about that, but it needs to be a balance, doesn't it, where everyone is getting what they need, and that way doulas are much more likely to stay doing that job for a longer period, and the world needs more doulas, so it's kind of a win-win, isn't it?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Because everybody suffers if a doula is not going to be paid properly, then like you said, she or whoever is the doula can't maintain that, like can't stay in it for burnout, for financial reasons, and then ultimately the families lose out, the pregnant women, pregnant people who are the post, or if you're offering postnatal packages, like they're the ones that are going to really lose out as well. And this can coexist, the passion and the desire to love, support, nurture and help people through the perinatal period, along with earning a decent wage. They can coexist. They don't need to conflict with each other. In fact, they should go hand in hand with each other. So I think that's a really important message for people to take away from today. If they're feeling like, oh, I can't charge this, or I can't charge that, or I shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, like, yes, you should. You should charge your worth. Like, what you're offering is valuable, and people need it and want it. Like, we're not saying charge ridiculous amounts and the earth. Charge what you value, your time, yourself, your expertise and your experience at, and feel good about that as well.
Yeah.
I would love to ask, listening back to your story, Sarah, and what brought you here, is there anything that you would have done differently? Have you had sort of any regrets or anything that you wish, I just wish that hadn't happened quite like that? Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
A couple of things. So one thing that I really searched for and didn't find, and I think that just came down to where I was, in Bournemouth at the time, and we didn't have many doulas. I was always searching for someone to work alongside. I think I think partnerships and, working relationships in the birth world can be so amazing. It's quite, there's a lot of pressure on you as a doula. You are that one person, and you may have done all the work beforehand with someone, preparing them for their birth, and then on the day, you just don't know what's going to happen. You might fall ill, one of your children might fall ill, something. And it feels like a lot of pressure. And I think also working in a partnership, shared care, as we call it, or with backup would be really helpful. So that's one thing I was always searching for, and I found the perfect person. And unfortunately, then her circumstances changed, and she couldn't work alongside me anymore. So I'm all about networking. I think it's so important to go out there and find your tribe within the birth world that you can work alongside. So that's one thing. Things that I would do differently. I would have invested in my business earlier if I had known how valuable that is. It was a long time before I looked into any sort of coaching, any sort of business support. And actually now, I've got Baba. I've used other coaches for different things, and they've all brought something different to it. And it's such a huge. It felt very sticky at first, paying someone else to do what I wasn't really sure of, what I was going to get at first. And I felt like, as a just me, just doing my thing here, how could I possibly justify spending all that money investing in myself, in my business? Well, what a stupid question, because I haven't looked back. I really haven't looked back. I think for every pound that I have put into this journey of having coaching, business support, I have, taken 2, 3, 4 times out, by the turnover in my business. It's just been an amazing thing. I would never, ever in a million years have bought Nurturing Birth if I hadn't had some business coaching a year or two before that, which actually really helped me see my worth, helped me see where I could go,
Mhm.
And that's the thing. I could, I'd had created a lovely business and it was kind of ticking along, but that's where I thought I was, and that's where I thought I was staying. And it wasn't until I invested in myself and worked with someone who showed me the possibilities and helped me work out what my limitations were, and then helped me work out where I could go. And amazing. So, I just think if I had known 5-10 years ago how much of a difference it would have made, I would have gone down that path a long time ago. So
That's really interesting, and I think it's really common in the birth world to not not invest in yourself, to like see it as like, oh, like my business doesn't earn enough money to justify that kind of support, or everything I earn I need to like put into the family, or put spend on other people, which is what women tend to do specifically. So I find it to be a really, really common thing. And so not placing the value on that investment can be a really big mistake. And then when you do invest, just like you did, Sarah, you look at it and you're like, why didn't I do this ages ago? I could have got here. I could have got here earlier. But then it's not about regrets, because our journey is our journey, isn't it? And we do what we do when we do it for various different reasons. But that's really powerful to hear the difference between you having that coaching experience and it really preparing you and opening you up for this new journey that you're on now. So like, hats off to you for making that decision. I think I chose really early on to have some support, and I've kind of had support all the way through. I've taken breaks, because I think that's important as well, because you can become quite dependent on coaching and feel like, oh, I've always got to have a coach, which is okay for some people, but I got to a point where I had to take a complete break from any coaching, and I didn't have any coaching for about 18 months, and it didn't do me any. It wasn't like a bad thing. It was actually a good thing. It gave me time to integrate everything that I had learned and to put everything into practice and actually really trust in myself, making those decisions. So yeah, really interesting idea there, definitely. So the next question I think is important for us to ask is, what has your biggest lesson been in business so far?
Oh gosh, I've had so many lessons in business. I would say, I think understanding what my strengths and what my weaknesses are has been really, really useful. So I've learned a lot about myself in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So the first coach that I worked with actually was completely not what I was expecting, and I was a little bit disappointed at the time, thinking, well, this is not what I thought I was buying into. But actually was really kind of focused on money and how what my relationship was with money, which was very interesting. I would suggest to anybody to actually do some work around money, because there are so many stories that we tell ourselves that we don't know that we're doing it, from going right back to how money was talked about in your home as a child, and how you perceive money, and how happy you are to receive. But anyway, I could go off on a tangent there, but so, and I've forgotten where I was going with that. But basically,
your strengths and weaknesses.
So understanding that, and understanding that actually I could charge more for things and be okay with that, was great. But I think understanding what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, what I could learn to do, and what I didn't need to learn to do. So there are things with the technical side, not so great with some things. And actually, I have paid people to do, social media for me. I've paid people to do website stuff for me, bits and bobs behind the scenes with the software that I use. Because I think, I could sit at my laptop for 4 hours wrangling with something that could take someone else 20 minutes. So understanding, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what I need to be better at, what I need not to worry about, and things like that. So I think that's a really good and not be too hard on yourself about it, and I think one of the things that has come out of me having various sort of people support me and, doing work on myself is that I'm much kinder to myself. I talk to myself in a much more kind way. I talk to myself now more like I would talk to a friend and someone that I care about, rather than beating myself up and saying, "Oh God, Sarah, you're so rubbish at that." I'm like, okay, that's not your area. That's not your zone of genius. One of the phrases that gets thrown around a lot. But it doesn't matter. You don't need to be amazing at everything. I know what I am really good at. I mean, put me in front of a room of people who want to be a doula and I light up. That's my zone of genius. That's my area that really, I get so passionate about that. When someone contacts me and arranges, a quick chat over Zoom to, what's the word?
Like a discovery call sort of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a discovery call. I could do that all day, every day. So knowing that that is my area of genius. I can talk about the courses, I get really lit up, fine. But also knowing that sitting and planning my social media for the next 6 weeks doesn't really light me up in quite the same way. But just being okay that that's not what makes me tick. That's not where I'm best, using my resources. So just understanding that someone else can do that and it's okay. It's okay to pay someone else to come in and do the things that you're not good at, because then you free yourself up to do the stuff that you are good at, and you get to do the stuff in your business that's going to make the difference and make it all about you. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think understanding your strengths and weaknesses is huge. And I think with working in a partnership, Anna and I, it's really great that we have very similar personalities and things going on, loads of connections, but we have things that we differ in what we're good at when it comes to running the business, and they just kind of slot in really well and they work really well together. So there's no point in asking me to build a sales page. I'll be like, what? And we'll be there forever. But ask me to bash out some copy and I can do it dead quickly, so it's we kind of work well in that way. So definitely when you're on your own, figuring out your strengths and weaknesses. But when you're in the really early days and you don't necessarily have the time to have the funds, to pay for a social media manager or for that kind of support, really doubling down on what you're good at. So for you, Sarah, I think it was always networking, wasn't it, in your local area and building relationships, and that, helps to grow your business rather than focusing on social media and putting so much time into it and feeling like you're not getting anywhere. Focus on the things that you're really good at. So I think that's a really good piece of advice and something to share.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you get to a point in business where you are ready to get a bit of help, even if it's just, a couple of hours a week, if you don't know your strengths and weaknesses, then you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes with your with who you're hiring or who you're taking on before you find the right person. I've seen lots of people do that, and I think I kind of learned from that, and it really, I employed my current assistant. I've done it with her. My original assistant, we were friends. I trusted her with my clients, basically. That's why she became my assistant, because I knew I could trust her with the kind of sensitive information that my business kind of holds. So that's why I picked her. But and it was great. But then when I grew bigger, I needed someone who came and worked for me as a team on the team. And I think probably the best thing I did with that was to do a personality test as the first step, because I knew what my strengths and weaknesses were, and I literally needed someone who was going to fill those weak areas of my business. And luckily I found a couple of people and I had to choose one. So that makes a really big difference. I think that's, a great thing to be able to share from this, is that, as you're growing your business, when you're getting to that point of growth and you are looking at, okay, I'd rather prefer to spend some time in the bits that I love and not so many of the things that I don't love. Understanding that on a deeper level is really useful. So our last question we've got for you today, Sarah, is what one piece of advice would you give to a birth and baby business owner who wants to create an impactful and sustainable business?
Okay, such a great question. So I think the top thing I would say is just be who you are and find out who that is and kind of work on that. So I think people, they get hung up on what they should be doing, how they should be doing it, what sort of doula they should be because of XYZ, what so and so down the road is doing or what other people are doing. And I know it's very difficult for people when they're at the beginning of their journey to see this sometimes, but it's just knowing what is it that makes you you, and then concentrating on that and working within that, because trying to be someone that you're not is, well, it's exhausting for a start. And it's just it's not genuine. And I think the thing with doulaing is that when people are hiring a doula, when they're looking for someone to either be at their birth or be in their home in the early weeks when they've got their new baby, it's a big commitment having someone with you at that time of your life. And it's all about who that person is, what they're going to bring to that space and how they're going to do it. And I think, if we can help people kind of really understand that, they are their product. I think of myself when I was working really actively as a doula, I was selling myself, and selling to potential clients what difference I was going to make to them, what difference I was going to make to their birth, the positive impact that I could bring in the things that I was doing. Yeah. And I think that's what, we can get so distracted with the noise around, Instagram pages and amazing websites and packages and charging and all those things. But actually, just at the core of everything is that person, and it's that personal connection, and it's what you're going to be able to bring to those people. So, the doula and client relationship is so special. And I learned that the hard way, and I talk about this on the courses. I talk about how I was that doula at the beginning who just wanted all the jobs and wanted to support everybody. And I took on clients that in hindsight, and I wouldn't do it now, I should have walked away and said, I'm sorry, I'm not the doula for you. Because if that connection isn't there, everything around it just feels false. It feels contrived. It's hard work, and nobody wants that. You want, the wonderful kind of, heart-led connections, and then you can just be your true self and just knowing what it is, So I very much then became a doula who talked about, I love coffee, I love being on the beach, I'm a bit sweary, and I'm well known for being a bit of a potty mouth. That's me, and that's what people buy into. They like that they can be, relaxed around me, that I like, a laugh and a joke, and I love meeting for coffee, and that became my thing. Whereas I've had wonderful doulas come through the course, and I could see their, their personality shine through, but they couldn't necessarily, and they wanted to like put themselves into this little box of this is what I should be and this is how I should do it. And I had one amazing lady who she was a vegan chef. She cooked the most amazing stuff, and she'd bring it every day while we were on the course, and we'd all be like dribbling at these lunches, and she was almost embarrassed about it, and we were like, this is such an amazing thing, this could be your thing. She wanted to work as a postnatal doula. I said, you could literally market yourself as, the vegan doula, and people would, honestly, they'd be throwing themselves in front of you if you would come into their house for the first 6 to 8 weeks of their baby's life and make wonderful vegan nutritious balanced meals for them. And she just couldn't see it, and I was like, oh, it's so frustrating. And I just really want people to see that it's them. That's what we're selling. That's what we are as doulas. We're the personality, the person. We can have all the courses and the buzzers and the bells. That's not what it's all about. It's about that connection and what you bring into that space. So
yeah,
sorry, I get very excited.
No,
and passionate
I love it.
about these things.
Oh, I love it, definitely. And I think that is such a good piece of advice to pass on to people. And for anyone who's kind of like struggling, thinking like, well, who am I, or what can I bring to the table, or like, what do I represent as a doula or a birth worker or a birth or baby business owner? I'd really recommend that you tune in and you do some inner work on that, so look at writing out like what your skills are, what your strengths are, what your qualities are, what people say you're good at, what you're good at, and like really go for it. Sometimes it can be a little bit feel like, because we're, especially if you're British, it's like we can't toot our own horns, can we?
Oh, yeah.
Toot your horn. That's what I'm going to say. Toot your horn, and you'll really start to get to know yourself a little bit better. So that journaling, meditating, breath work, tuning in, getting inside where your intuition is going to help you understand yourself a bit more. And that is really an intrinsic part of business. We Anna and I say this a lot, make that sort of work where you are taking care of yourself, getting to know yourself better, developing yourself, make it part of your business, make it part of your day. Don't make it a nice add-on or additional extra, because it's vital work. Definitely. Thank you, Sarah, so much for your time today and for sharing your journey and your wisdom and everything with us. So as we're finishing up, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can get in touch with you, and what you can offer them?
So yes, we currently have doula courses running. We do a mixture of online or in person. So there's kind of something for everyone. Some people love to, that personal connection.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm all for that. If you can get together with a group of people in a room, so lovely. But equally, we understand that often people have, restrictions and they can't travel and what have you. So you can do a course with us online or in person. We have a couple of different courses. We teach all over the UK at the moment. London, I've got Exeter coming up. I think I'm going to be up north somewhere towards the end of the year. We've even got a course running in Lisbon, if anyone fancies a bit of sunshine. And and we can be found on Instagram, nurturing_birth, or our website. Now, I'm literally in the throes of just redoing the website. So it's still got Sophie on it at the moment in quite a lot of areas, because that's been a little bit of a job I need to get around to, but I'm literally just working with someone now to get our website up together. So it's www.nurturingbirth.co.uk, and all our course dates are on there. I love discovery calls, so if you are in the slightest bit interested in training to be a doula, I love to just make a coffee and sit and have a half-hour Zoom chat with people. There's no hard sell. I'm not, I think choosing a doula course is very much like choosing a doula. It's got to be the right fit.
Yeah.
We've got to be the right course provider for that, so I'm just down for having a chat and just seeing if that is, if we're the correct fit. So if anyone wants to do that, they can book a Calendly little chat with me via the Instagram page. It's on there. So yeah. That's Perfect. How you can find us.
Brilliant. That sounds great. And we'll link all of that information in the show notes. So if you've been watching or if you've been watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, then, please let us know what you got from this episode. Give Sarah some love for sharing her journey and her story with us. So yeah, drop a comment, like, subscribe, so that we can keep bringing out these episodes for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.